welcome, everybody. I'm just so glad you could join us today because we are going to look at some incredibly crucial source material. Today's subject is a big one. It's about how to trek safely in the Everest region. And to be completely honest with you, right out of the gate, the gloves are coming off for this conversation.
Yeah, they really have to. There's just no room for sugarcoating this anymore.
Exactly. So we are doing a deep dive into a serious, really eye-opening travel article by Nepal guidebook author David Ways. Over the past few years, David has been rigorously covering some severe, actually life-threatening issues in the region, specifically regarding those massively popular high-altitude routes, right? Like Everest Base Camp, Gokyo-ri, and the three high passes.
Right, and the grim reality that we just have to face head-on today is that people have been going missing. They're getting horribly lost and dying in recent years. And I think the most frustrating part of this entire situation is that it is happening unnecessarily.
Completely unnecessarily.
Yeah. David has spent years promoting safe trekking. He's actively helping coordinate mountain rescues, and he runs missingtrekker.com. But somehow, despite all of that visible effort and all the warnings, the core survival message is just it's still not sinking in for a massive portion of modern travelers.
It's really not. I was reading through the recent trends David highlighted in his article, and it is infuriating. We are dealing with this rampant, toxic influencer culture right now. I mean, in just the past year alone, David has reported a huge increase in people asking him how to directly copy some highly edited YouTube video, taking an obscure, dangerous route.
Right, the copycat syndrome.
Exactly. They are asking how to complete the trek in much shorter times than what is medically advised, and they want to do it completely alone. We are even seeing people asking about doing nighttime treks because nothing says fun vacation quite like wandering around a freezing, oxygen-deprived cliff edge in the pitch black, right? Just to avoid paying for a lodge. Some are even promoting picking up a cheap, unregulated guide in Lukla.
It's madness. The online advice ecosystem has become so influencer-heavy and completely unvetted that it is now dangerous to the point of being deadly. And that isn't hyperbole. This exact type of social media-influenced advice recently led directly to the death of a trekker.
Yeah.
The algorithms are prioritizing beautiful visuals and these dramatic speed runs over actual, boring logistical safety. So sparing absolutely no punches whatsoever. Our mission today is to look at exactly how to trek the region safely. And we really need to investigate why this environment has spiraled into such a massive, fatal issue for unprepared travelers.
Let's start with the common risks and what the source material actually calls the guide problem. You have to understand that this specific area, the Solo Khumbu region, operates under a very unique and frankly dangerous set of rules compared to the rest of the country.
It does. In 2023, Nepal introduced a mandatory guide law for most of its major trekking regions. So places like the Annapurna Conservation Area now legally require you to have a licensed guide with you at all times. But this specific region we are discussing today, which ironically contains some of the highest, most geographically hostile trekking routes on the entire planet, is entirely exempt from that law.
Right. And the article actually points a finger at internal tourism politics for this specific exemption. And, whatever the local political machinations behind it might be, and we are impartially reporting the source here, not taking any sides on Nepali politics, the reality for you, the trekker on the ground, is that this loophole creates a massive false sense of security.
Absolutely.
You read a headline that says you don't need a guide here, and you just assume it must be perfectly safe to go it alone.
Which couldn't be further from the truth. And this false sense of security is heavily compounded by the intensely promoted Trek card system. Travelers arrive, they pay for this card, and they think they're entering some kind of high-tech safety net.
But they aren't.
No, not at all. The Trek card is essentially just a local registration tax printed on a piece of plastic. It is not a GPS tracking device. It is not a rescue system. To date, it has not been shown to successfully locate or save a single missing person. Your name goes on a paper list somewhere in an office, but out there on the ice, you are entirely on your own.
The deception doesn't start when you arrive, though. I mean, it starts months earlier on your phone.
Let's talk about the online hype and the bad advice industry. You log onto YouTube and you see these gorgeous cinematic trekking vlogs. The sun is shining, there's a soaring, inspirational acoustic soundtrack playing, and the vlogger is just strolling along, making it look like a casual Sunday walk in the park.
Yeah, but what they completely hide from you are the local porters carrying 20 kilograms of gear right behind the camera. They hide the professional guides organizing every single logistical detail. And they definitely hide the days of miserable, skull-crushing altitude headaches that just got left on the cutting room floor. It is a completely curated performance. It's designed for engagement, not education. But the really insidious part isn't just the flashy YouTube videos. It's what happens when you move over to Facebook groups and TripAdvisor forums looking for peer advice.
This part is truly alarming. The source material outlines how these spaces have been heavily infiltrated by trekking agents operating entirely fake profiles.
Wow.
Yeah, they spend 6 months building a persona. They answer basic questions, act like your friendly fellow traveler from the UK or Australia, and they build community trust. Then, once someone asks for a recommendation, they casually drop a link to their own specific, often dangerously subpar, unregulated agency.
It's a long con. And it works so incredibly well because you think you are getting authentic peer-to-peer advice from someone who just got off the mountain. And relying on that kind of outdated or fake advice is literally fatal. Trail conditions in the Himalayas are not static. They change violently every single monsoon season. Entire bridges wash out, paths collapse down the mountainside, and rock falls alter the landscape permanently.
Exactly. Following old advice from a 2-year-old forum post is just a recipe for disaster. The shifting trails specifically around La Buche are notorious for this. That specific area has severe communication blackout zones. If you take a wrong turn because you are following an outdated map or a fake influencer's route, you cannot just pull out your smartphone and call for an emergency extraction. You are completely off the grid, surrounded by vertical rock.
Which brings us to the deadly trend of trying to save a few dollars by picking up an unlicensed street guide. You fly into the local airport, you realize maybe you are in a bit over your head, but you still want to do it on the cheap. So you hire a random person hanging around outside the airstrip who offers you a bargain daily rate.
And that is where things turn tragic. The source material shares a profoundly devastating incident at the Cho La Pass to illustrate exactly what happens in that scenario. A Korean trekker decided to hire an unregulated cheap guide off the street. They made it up to 5,535 meters, which is an incredibly hostile environment for the human body. The trekker began suffering from severe altitude sickness. He was stumbling, losing coherence. This unregulated guide had no professional insurance, no backing from a registered agency, no emergency oxygen, and absolutely no legal obligation to stay. So realizing things were turning fatal and wanting to avoid any liability or complicated rescue logistics, the guide simply turned around and abandoned the trekker alone on the mountain. The trekker died within hours.
God, it's just a heartbreaking story. And the most infuriating part is that it was entirely preventable. We really need to break down the massive difference between a street guide and a real professional. When you hire a real agency guide, someone actually registered with PAN, which is the official Trekking Agencies Association of Nepal, you aren't just paying for a walking buddy to point out the peaks.
No, you are paying for a high-altitude project manager.
Exactly. You are paying for constant medical monitoring. A TAN guide is checking your blood oxygen levels at dinner. They are trained to spot the subtle signs of sickness in your speech and your gait long before you even feel the headache.
You are paying for their emergency evacuation coordination, their satellite communication tools, their up-to-date route knowledge, and most importantly, their professional accountability. They are legally and professionally bound by an official agency contract to keep you alive. That professional accountability is the literal difference between life and death when things go wrong at extreme elevations.
And things will go wrong, which means we have to talk about acute mountain sickness, or AMS. It is the invisible wall of the Himalayas. We all know the golden rule up there. Hike high, sleep low. You climb up to a higher elevation during the day to let your body acclimate to the thinning air, but you must return to a lower elevation to actually sleep and recover. But what the article points out is that this new wave of internet-fueled trekkers is completely ignoring that rule just to beat some arbitrary speed record they saw on TikTok.
The fundamental misunderstanding about AMS is that people think their gym routine matters. We cannot stress this enough. Your physical fitness provides absolutely zero immunity to altitude sickness.
None at all.
You could be an Olympic marathon runner, your VO2 max could be off the charts, and AMS can still drop you into a coma. It affects up to 50% of all trekkers who go above 3,500 meters. The mountain does not care about your resting heart rate. It is entirely about how your specific genetics handle the sudden lack of atmospheric pressure and how carefully you pace your ascent.
To give you an idea of the insane physical toll we are talking about, consider the popular viewpoint, Kalapathar. It sits at an astonishing 5,644 meters. That is higher than any peak in the entire European Alps. You are operating in an environment where the air is drastically thin, where just putting on your boots in the morning leaves you out of breath, and every single step up an incline requires immense concentrated effort.
Which is exactly why preparation is not something you can just cram for a week before your flight. You cannot just buy expensive gear and assume the jacket will do the walking for you.
I was looking at the physical prep section of David's guide, and it is a wake-up call. You need to be doing 3 to 6 months of serious cardio and weighted pack hiking before you even step foot on the plane to Nepal. And please make sure your boots are thoroughly broken in. Walking 50 kilometers in them back home before you leave is the bare minimum. Blisters at 4,000 meters are not just an annoyance, they can completely end your trek. An open wound at that altitude, in those sanitary conditions, is a severe medical liability.
And when a trek ends badly because of an injury or AMS, we enter the nightmare scenario of helicopter rescues. A helicopter evacuation is not a taxi service you can just call up on a whim. It is completely weather dependent. If there is cloud cover, heavy wind, or a whiteout, no one is flying to get you. You could be stuck in a freezing lodge for days while your brain literally swells from the altitude.
And when they finally do fly, the financial reality is staggering. A single extraction costs anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000 US. Having comprehensive travel insurance that explicitly covers your maximum intended altitude in writing is absolutely non-negotiable. If your policy only covers you up to 3,000 meters and you collapse at 5,000, you are paying that 15 grand out of pocket before the rotors even start spinning.
You also cannot rely on local medical infrastructure to just bail you out up there. The safety nets you might assume exist in popular tourist destinations simply aren't guaranteed in the high Himalayas. The text suggests the medical aid post in Parachi actually closed down due to alleged corruption and an over-reliance on highly profitable helicopter rescues. Now, we aren't here to verify the complex local medical politics behind that claim, but the reality for you on the ground remains exactly the same. The aid post is simply not there to help you anymore.
The ultimate takeaway from all of this is that expectation management is critical. Before you even think about tackling these extreme altitudes, especially if you are a first-timer, you need to build up your reference points. David makes a brilliant point about not making the Everest region your very first Himalayan experience. You need to understand how your body reacts to the environment, the local food, and the logistics of trekking in a developing nation first.
You build that baseline by exploring lower altitude regions or doing simpler hikes. Test your gear, test your stomach, and test your patience before you enter a zone where a mistake costs your life.
Good.
Practically speaking, you also have to build buffer days into your itinerary. Nepal is an incredibly dynamic country, and travel can sometimes be abruptly halted by unforeseen circumstances. You might encounter a sudden political or transport strike, known locally as a banda. If you have an international flight to catch and the strike completely shuts down the road networks for 2 days, and you haven't built in any buffer days, your entire schedule collapses. You cannot schedule a high-altitude expedition down to the final hour. The mountain and the country dictate the schedule, not your return ticket.
We have covered a massive amount of crucial ground today. If you are planning this journey, let's just recap the core survival takeaways. Number 1, do not trust social media for your logistical safety. The videos are heavily edited illusions, and the forums are packed with fake profiles pushing unregulated scams. Number 2, always hire a licensed TN-registered guide from a reputable agency. Do not try to save $20 a day by hiring a stranger off the street. You are literally gambling with your life. And number 3, understand that standard Everest Base Camp treks require a minimum of 12 days to safely acclimatize. Anyone selling you a faster 9-day itinerary is prioritizing their profit over your physical survival.
And to speak directly to you, the listener, for a moment, the mountain does not care about your spectacular views, your follower count, or how fast you run a 10K at sea level. You're ultimately responsible for your own safety, and that responsibility begins months before you ever arrive at the trailhead.
If you want to get the absolute best preparation possible and read the full breakdown of these issues, we highly promote checking out David Ways' The Longest Way Home Nepal Travel website and his comprehensive guidebooks. His Trekking in Nepal guidebook is widely regarded as the most updated guidebook in the world today. Because trail conditions change every single season, having that current, rigorously researched information is invaluable. There is a lot of information to take in here, so be sure to check the show notes for a dedicated link to safety in the Everest region.
I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over as you plan your next adventure. Think about the sheer amount of unseen logistics, local knowledge, and raw human effort it takes to keep modern trekkers alive at 5,000 meters. If our modern conveniences, like a free map app on a smartphone or a plastic registration card in our pocket, give us a false sense of security, are we actually becoming less equipped to handle the wild than the trekkers who ventured up there without them 20 years ago?